there's a lack of that right now. Most of the work since 2005, when the Navy started installing monitor wells at the Red Hill facility, because they found fuel contamination under 19 of the 20 tanks when they drilled rock cores under those tanks. Those wells have been located on Navy property where the Red Hill facility sits. There's been very little monitor wells in Halawa Valley and also none in Mauna Loa Valley that can look off-site where the groundwater might be moving and transporting fuel contamination off-site. So there would need to be dozens of monitor wells. I remember back in 2014 and 2015, I was asked the question, Ernie, how many monitor wells do you think are needed to better understand what's happening there? And you know, I just said, I'd like to see 100 monitor wells drilled on either side of that valley, because the more wells we can drill, the more certainty we can have on what's happening deep underground, in the underground aquifer, and what's contained in that aquifer, which might be fuel contamination. So a much more aggressive investigation needs to be done before I can make the decision, the difficult decision to turn on Halawa shaft, Halawa wells, or IAO wells. So there are two things that need to happen: the defueling of the facility and also the aggressive investigation into the aquifer on Halawa Valley and also Mauna Loa Valley. That needs to happen before we can move forward to safely turn on our wells. Thank you.
Admiral Barnett, when you say the Navy's intent is to remediate the spill, how do you define that goal? Is it the restoration to the state of pure, clean drinking water we've always had here as a public trust resource? Or is it some other measure of acceptable levels of contaminants as defined by EPA and DOH?
That's a good question, and what I would like to say is to have the safe water. That's the important thing. And we're going to work with our regulators for them to, you know, as we share our data, when they tell us that the water is safe, that's a direction that we want to take on that. We work closely with them. Our staffs are meeting weekly. We're sharing our data to show that, and like Ernie said, we do have wells. We're trying to build more of these wells that we can go and open up the aperture to put more wells out, sentinel or monitoring wells, and we're going to still share that data also with our regulators and stakeholders, so we can, you know, let the data take care of us and take care of our water. But we will. My goal, my definition of success here is to protect the people, protect the water, and to protect the environment.
So Kathy, how does this oversight work moving forward? And how will DOH be communicating to the public with respect to the progress?
Thank you for that question. The Department of Health, in my mind, there are two different ways, or two parallel paths that we have to take. One is the defueling and decommissioning of the tanks. The other is the recovery of the aquifer. As to the recovery of the aquifer, we're working closely with our stakeholders, Board of Water Supply, Seaworm, on how best to recover the aquifer. As to the defueling, we need to wait really for the defueling plan. We need to have that defueling plan so that we can go forward with defueling. We really want the Navy to feel the same sense of urgency that the Department of Health and the people of Hawaii feel, that we need to get active, not in years, in months. We need to have this thing done. So, thank you.
I'm going to lob this next one out, and whoever wants to answer can answer. On Tuesday at the legislative hearing, the Navy said that it would take 20 to 40 years for the fuel to be broken down by natural means. What are our options from now until then to actively remove fuel from our aquifer?
That's kind of a loaded question. it is recovery of the aquifer, which is how you're going to clean up the aquifer. And so one of the ways is that 20 to 30 years, which is the natural attenuation. In my mind, that's just not acceptable. We need to find a way to clean up our aquifer quickly.
If I could add that I'm not assuming that we can clean up the aquifer completely. I think there may be some damages that are beyond recovery. And that is my fear. I hope I'm completely wrong, that the fuel hasn't spread and that the aquifer can be easily cleaned up. But I fear that that may not be the case. So right now, like Wayne mentioned, 104 million gallons sits right over our aquifer, 100 feet above it. There's a 27% chance every year that another release between 1,000 to 30,000 gallons can occur. So that means that threat needs to be removed from being to our aquifer, because our aquifer has been injured. It has been hurt already. We just don't know how badly. We need to find out how badly and try to address the pain that our aquifer is experiencing right now.
When you touched on this a little bit at your intro, but I want to go back around to it. You know, safe drinking water is obviously important to everyone in the community, but right now, the ball is in the court of the regulators, and decisions are being made at the military level. Going forward, what is the role for members in the community, and how can they engage to not only make sure that this process is handled properly, but to also look at different ways at which, moving forward, we have a voice in the decisions that get made at this level. Just like, you know, including building the tanks in the first place.
So, I think it's super important to realize that we've come this far. We've got some major progress made just in this last year, and it's all because people mobilized, people stood up, people understood that it's all our collective kuleana to protect this island and our water, and that kuleana continues, right? I really don't think we can, as much as I appreciate that the Navy is finally coming out and engaging with the broader community, it's not clear that they, as an institution, will care about the situation as an urgent crisis, as Dr. Cole stated. It's up to us to make them care. And there's, so for folks here and for folks watching, absolutely, reach out to the Circle of Hawaii, reach out to Kapolewai, Water Protectors, CNHA. There's networks that are already are continuing to mobilize and continuing to strategize about how we can make them even care, make them treat this as an emergency, knowing that they don't necessarily have the connections that we do, right? I mean, Admiral Barnett's predecessor, he was here for less than a year. I don't know who in the Navy leadership is going to be here in 2.5 years, when the Red Hill may or may not be filled. So we have to be the ones with connections to this place, with investments, in the health and well-being of ourselves and our future generations to hold their feet to the fire, hold our leaders accountable so that they can hold the Navy's feet to the fire. And absolutely, talk to your neighbors, talk to your coworkers, let them know that we're not powerful with Red Hill. Like, we're still under existential threat. And if you find like 5 people that want to do something, there's ways that even small groups of folks can use what their skills, their powers, do what they enjoy, and at the same time take action to protect our water. And So yeah, find those people and reach out to the Oyster Club, reach out to me, we'll work together. We'll organize and yeah, do our part to present this to.
I just want to say mahalo to the Sierra Club, to Wayne Tanaka and his team there, and also the Oahu Ernie Lau by himself, trying to sound the alarm for 8 years didn't work. But everybody together and with the community, it's important. So what's important going forward is that the information on the progress and what we're finding and also what we're going to be doing, that needs to be communicated to the whole community. It needs to be a very transparent process. Many years ago, I was trying to be, I was told to sign a non-disclosure agreement, and I refused. I am a public servant. I serve all of you. Those are from Oahu, at least. But this is such a vital issue for our community. Perhaps the worst environmental disaster the state of Hawaii has experienced. That the information, the findings, they need to be transparent. The community needs to be kept informed of what's happening actively as we move through this journey that will take a number of years. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions from the community. I'm going to ask a couple here to mix it up a little bit. Admiral Barnett, the Navy leadership has spoken a lot about how the Navy recognizes that it needs to restore trust with our community. How is the Navy going to do this?
Thank you for that question. And I want to get to the trust question second. I want to bring up a point here that I hear you and I understand. I know there's concern about the constant transfer of senior folks like myself in and out. But what I will tell you is that, and I believe it was Frederick Douglass that said, behind the measurable seen is the immeasurable unseen. Kind of like your staff that you said are behind the scene working hard. My job also is to inoculate them with the culture. The folks that come in, there's the staff that I have working for me, the civilian staff that have been here for years and years. They are the ones that I am leaning on to help me continue pressing, or in a couple of years, whenever the Navy says, Steve, you gotta go, that's taken care of, that we keep this going, we keep this momentum going. That's what's important to me, and I want you to hear that from me personally. Particularly, I'm a proponent of when senior officers, senior enlisted, and we can open after or later come here, they need to be briefed, they need to have the training of how beautiful this place is and what's going on. So it's not more, so that's my ode to you, and that's what I'm working on. As I look at the trust item, yes, we have a lot of work. We have a lot of work to do to earn the trust. It's things like this. It's me coming out and my staff and listening and hearing you. It's being available. It's being transparent. If it was a football game, it's a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. I have to earn your trust. I understand that. My staff understands that. And I'm here to actually be part of that. If there are things that you think that I can do to earn the trust, I need to know that too. I really do. So make no mistake about it. I am here to do that. I'm here to defuel Red Hill. We are committed to that. And we're going to continue on that press, and you have my word on that.
Thank you.
And lastly, if I can tell you one thing, it's about the actions, not about the words. I understand trust comes back when you see things happen, and you get those visits. So I understand that.
Yeah, I'd like to speak about the trust and transparency. It's a culture, and so if you can change that culture, trust and transparency will come. One of the things is, now that the commitment has been made to defuel and decommission, do you have to cloud it? Does the tanks and surrounding pipelines have to be clouded by the confidentiality of protection of naval critical infrastructure. If the decision has been made to defuel and decommission, perhaps then you can give out the documents so that everybody can see it.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I'll take that for action. That's a very good point. I never thought of that. Thank you.
I'd like to follow up on that.
Response is not
And it has to do with the uncertainty of the number of previous spills, previous to last May, that has been looming that we don't have a lot of information about. I don't know if I can form this as a question, but there have been roughly 200,000 gallons that have been spilled in different field transfers since this facility was being built. And we know that that fuel is looming somewhere between the rock and the aquifer. And as we think about what just a few thousand gallons have done, as we think about remediation, and we think about also removing this fuel storage facility, we have to be cognizant of the 200,000 gallons that are sitting there, and make sure that we're accounting for that and how it is we move forward. Ready?
Yeah, Lehu and Kathy, thank you. Excellent point on this facility. The issues about Red Hill, it's worldwide, it's international. The facility was declassified in 1995. So, Admiral, I echo Kathy's suggestion here, because you can't deal with a problem if you don't have a good idea of what the problem is. So we don't know the full extent of the problem with this facility over its 79-year history because the information hasn't been shared. From the very beginning, when the Navy folks came to visit us at my office and they asked us, what should we do? And this is the engineers, the environmental engineers. Our advice to them was, just come clean. Tell it like it is. Just tell us what the issues are with this facility over its history from the very beginning when it was placed in 1943 in service. How much leaks occurred, where, and where do you think it went? All that information should be made available because that will help to define a clearer picture of what the real problem is. And not just the issues that happened last year, but the 72 other leaks that maybe it's 180,000 gallons documented fuel releases, and there may be other fuel releases that are not documented or shared to us. So that needs to come out.
About finding out how much actually was released. But what comes to mind is the investigation report that was recently issued by the Navy. That indicated it was a good, honest assessment of what went wrong. But that also indicated to me that the Department of Health did the right thing in issuing its emergency order and requiring the Navy to shut down, to not operate the facility. Until we can get a good answer about what's out there, we really need to get that information so that we can properly assess what's in the aquifer. Thank you.
This came in as a comment to the Admiral, but I want to just reframe it a little bit for all of you on stage. We recognize that moving forward, there is going to have to be unity in figuring out what the steps are and how we keep each other accountable as the regulator, as the military, as the purveyor, as the community. And so I'm going to read this comment because I think it's important to know we're here in this live audience. Hundreds of people are just enraptured with what you folks have to say, and this goes to Kanaka Maoli being involved in this process moving forward. And so they said, please consider including in a meaningful way Kanaka Maoli in the task force you mentioned No one knows Hawaii better than Hawaiians. We've been here for thousands of generations.
Hey,
And know our resources better than anyone else. It's imminent that we be at the decision-making table in this process. So folks, so then open up a few more minutes for us. And thank you to staff for shuffling a few things around. I know this is a really important issue, so I have a couple of just kind of more granular questions that I have on the plate that I think are important for us to kind of talk through. So Kathy, you know, I read a couple of weeks ago that the Department of Health is trying to reverse engineer the amount of fuel that might have entered the aquifer through some of the data. Can you speak to that? And then what happens if that number that you derive through the research is a vastly different number than what has been stated in the incident report that came out a few weeks ago?
Yeah, hopefully we'll get some answers from the Navy about what actually was released or what's out there. But what we're trying to do is, what data we have, we're trying to figure out what was reported as released, what we're seeing in the heat maps. We're trying to reverse to figure out what is actually, what may actually be in the aquifer. And in that way, we can determine a path forward on how we're best remediate the aquifer.
Thank you. Ernie, I'd like to talk a little bit about the idea of this plume and the fact that it's centered around Red Hill and Current, and that the plume is encased in rock and water, but the water is moving. There's been particle tracking displays that have been theoretically put together. But as the expert, can you help this audience to understand a little better as to what some of your concerns might be about how the plume moves and how does pumping interact with the potential movement of the plume?
Yeah, thank you, Lakewood. So just think of the aquifer as it's fresh water in the cracks and crevices of the lava rock below the island. And the water originates up Mauka, where the heaviest rainfall occurs. That water percolates down into that lava rock and then moves by gravity down in the direction of the ocean, from Mauka to Makai usually. But in the area of Red Hill, we think the groundwater might be actually even moving across Halava Valley, perhaps in the direction westerly to our wells, to Halava Wells, Halava Shaft. One of the reasons we turned off Halava Shaft, which is almost I use the analogy of a cup of water with 2 straws. Or think of a sponge, fully saturated with water, the sponge being the lava rock and the water in the sponge, like the water in the aquifer. You suck from one side of the sponge, you can pull water across the aquifer. So if we keep on pumping heavily on one side and the Navy stops pumping on their side, are we going to move or draw and suck that water through the underground aquifer? And also that water might be carrying fuel contaminants. So that's the kind of the simple analogy there. The groundwater is usually never stagnant or never in a place where it's not moving. It's usually moving in some direction. And generally it's Mauka to Makai. But because of the unique issues of the geology in that area, it could be moving more westerly and perhaps even easterly into Mauna Loa Valley. So those are some of the things that need to be fleshed out in the investigation. And that poses, this underground aquifer also is extremely complicated. It's very complex. There are preferential pathways like the area between different lava flows. The clinker zone is very porous and it allows water to flow easily. There's also something called lava tubes, and I talked about that a little earlier. Almost like a pipe in the aquifer where water can move easily. And water will move toward the path of least resistance. So these preferential pathways may move water and contamination much faster than normal conventional thought. And those are the unknowns we're wrestling with right now.
Thank you, Ernie. So we just have a few minutes left, and what I want to do is I want to offer a couple of minutes to each of you to leave us with one final thought about what you would like this audience to remember and engage with moving forward. And we'll start with, since we started last, we're going to start first with you, Admiral.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to listen. I took a lot of notes, and I know my staff took a lot of notes too. Make no mistake about it, we're going to get it right. I understand we need to be transparent. I also understand, and for my friends here on stage, I look forward to working with you as we get there. I look forward to working, to sharing data, to sharing discussions, and being part of that resolution. We will stand by for that. We will do that. We have been doing it, and we will continue to do it. My mind is running a million miles, and there's a lot of things going on. I heard a lot of things, and I felt a lot of things, and I understand. You will see more of me. I will be out and about, and I appreciate the opportunity. So thank you so much.
Can we get an agreement from the board of you to come back if needed at a future date if Julio wants to pull folks together to have more community conversations like this? I think this is really productive today.
We are committed to getting this right. We are committed.
I just want to leave this with you. On behalf of myself and the Department of Health and Dr. Char, we feel the enormous responsibility to the people of Hawaii to get these tanks defueled and decommissioned. And we also feel that responsibility to protect the aquifer for future generations. Thank you.
What do you want to do with your thing?
So one thing that's become incredibly clear throughout this whole ordeal is that what's happened here in Oahu, it's not isolated. This is just another example of a long history of practice and policy where communities all across Oceania, all across the continent, have been fighting to protect their water from being contaminated by U.S. military occupation. Okinawa, Wuhan, the Philippines, Sibukak in Alaska, Memphis, communities everywhere fighting. And what's really another compelling thing to me is that they're watching us because we've come so far. And so much of it, I think, is because of the organizing, and especially the Kanaka Maoli groups and coalitions that have been forming and raising the profile and speaking out to on national and international platforms. And so they're watching us because if we don't win, for them, where's the hope? And so even more so, I think, to help draw a line here, it's going to maybe set the example and give the inspiration for these other people to continue fighting, continue protecting water, protecting life, even if they're up against the biggest, most powerful military institution, the biggest bureaucracy, honestly, on the planet.
Ernie Lau is this unexpected individual who has been ringing the bell for many years now of how important this issue is. And Ernie, if it wasn't for you on December 2nd, almost losing your composure in a press conference, I don't think many people would have realized still how important this issue is. And yeah, please. Hashtag. He didn't even know what that was. And before I let Ernie talk, I'm going to say it's not easy to come up here in front of a group of hundreds of people to engage like this and to have a conversation with the community. So how about a round of applause for everyone here today? The final closing thought, and I want you to tell us what is the most important thing to you when we consider this whole issue.
Kabai ola, ola I kabai. So I leave you with this. There is a challenging path forward, but we can only be successful if we do this together. I mahalo to everybody in this room, from that side of the room all the way across to this side of the room. Every one of you have made a difference on this issue. So mahalo, and please stay on this issue because we have to do this together. And it has to be at all levels of government, from local government, the city and county level, all the way to the state, to the federal level. This is a federal issue that we're dealing with, and it will require all of us in Hawaii working together to resolve this issue and not let this tragedy go uncorrected. Mahalo.